look, I'm not your dad, right? I can't tell you what to do. I can't tell you what not to do. But what I am is a guy with a lot of mental, financial, and scars on my life. Things that I've done which have harmed me, my progress through life, my opportunities, friendships, relationships, and a whole host of other things. And I want to talk to younger people today, although other people might find it beneficial, about gambling. Now, what I promise you I'm not going to do is what you've probably been subjected to multiple times from the time you started school to the time you're whatever position you're in, whether you're still in education or you just left and you've got a job or whatever. Um, what I people had a propensity to do during that period, what they call the formative years, is just come and tell you about the dangers of everything and that you shouldn't do things and that things are bad. You'll get it with alcohol, drugs, smoking, everything. People just come along and tell you that all this stuff's bad, and then what happens is that you try the stuff that they tell you is bad and that you shouldn't do because that's what people do, and you realise that actually it's not all that bad. You know, drinking can be fun, and generally probably won't kill you. Drugs, recreational drugs, can be enjoyable. You know, taken in the right quantities, at the right stuff, and treated in the right way. And again, you can try them probably and not die the first time you try them. And so all the warnings that you've been given are in fact lies. And the chances are, with gambling, you can do that as well. You can go out and you can have a punt on the football, or you can do an acca, or you can play a fruit machine, or you can go to a casino, or whatever. You can do that, and what you probably won't do straight away is get addicted and end up skint and homeless and all the rest of it. So I'm not going to tell you not to gamble because that's just stupid. And if I sit here and say, if you gamble, you're going to become addicted and lose your house and your relationships and no one's going to talk to you and you're going to be skint and ruin your life, then that's just nonsense because you'll try gambling and that won't happen and you'll think, well, that bloke's full of shit, isn't he? And I might be full of shit, all right? But I'm not going to lie to you in that way. Anyway, what advice could I give if you are young? And by young, I mean you could still be at school. Maybe you're, late teens, early 20s. That's young. Trust me. When you get to my age, that's bloody young. Um, when when you see your friends' kids coming out and drinking in pubs, that's when you know you're getting old, right? Here's my advice. Try it. Try gambling. Because you're gonna. Most people, particularly boys, will. It's we are targeted as men by the gambling companies a lot more. Young people will be progressively more targeted because they have more disposable income. Generally speaking, fewer financial commitments. So, if you lose all your money gambling, you generally don't have a big mortgage to pay or child support or any of the rest of it. Also, as a young person, you'll probably have a unspoilt credit score. And what I will say is, for God's sake, whatever you do, keep it that way, because it's amazing now how much of life in sort of 2024 is based on credit and your credit score and your ability to borrow money. If you ever have any aspirations of owning or indeed renting a house or getting a car on lease or anything, getting a phone contract, try and look after your credit score. And gambling is a good one-way ticket to ruining it. Trust me. Once it gets its claws into you, you're not going to care who you're borrowing money from and whether or not you're even actually going to intend to pay it back. All right. So, my advice is do it, but be on your guard. That's the crux of it. Do it, but be on the lookout for any of the following signs. I'm going to go through some of the signs that I maybe subconsciously noticed but didn't actually put into action. Some of the things that maybe I should have paid more attention to and taken action upon many, many years ago. Now, some of these things are going to sound incredibly cliche. Some of them are things that you're going to have heard on anti-gambling adverts or on posters or in bookies' windows or whatever, But I'm going to try and put them in a less patronising and sort of more practical way. The one we hear the most is when the fun stops, stop. And the problem with this, of course, is, well, from my experience, once you realise that gambling is no longer fun, then quite often you're already in quite a bit of trouble. So I would say my advice is, if you find yourself thinking about gambling, If you find yourself taking yourself away from the sort of type of gambling that you normally do and normally enjoy in order just to place a bet, that is a bit of a red flag. Gambling is all around us, so if you're a youngster, you might be going out to the pubs or whatever with your mates, or around the bars in town, or whatever it is you crazy young people do these days. And, there'll be fruit machines in pubs, and maybe because you're out with your mates, you'll have a few quid, whatever. Maybe you go out the weekend and watch the football when it's bloody back on. It's about time, isn't it? And you go and you have a few bets. You have a few accas. Maybe you watch, it's not Jeff Stilling anymore, but whatever, that soccer Saturday programme. And you watch the scores come in, you check off your betting slips and all the rest with your mates, right? So far, I would say so few red flags. If you find yourself betting on football, but not watching the games, suddenly you find yourself betting on football that you don't have any interest in, and you're doing it at home on your own. You find yourself leaving your mates in the pub to wander over to the bookies to have a bet on the fob tee. You find yourself partaking in non-social gambling of a type that you've never done before. They had those great, and I thought they actually were one of the very few anti-gambling adverts which were really good, the bet regret ones, where the guy finds himself on his phone in a kebab shop at 3 o'clock in the morning betting on the Albanian 3rd Division. And that's kind of the nth degree of what I'm talking about, If you find yourself gambling in ways that aren't part of a wider sort of social experience, that's a big red flag. And that will possibly come before you actually realise that you're not enjoying doing it anymore. By the time you get to when the fun stops, you're going to find it probably quite difficult to stop. If you're spending time away from other things that you should be doing, we all have recreation time, and if you want to spend that time, having a few beers and a few punts and it's not causing any problems, then it's not for me to tell you not to. But if it's eating into other areas of life, for example, if you go to the bookies on a lunch break from work, something like that, and you're late back to work, or if you're late to get home for dinner because you stopped off and had a punt somewhere, or if you find yourself, and I think this is an even bigger one than the physical time factor, if you find yourself withdrawn in social situations, and that could be with friends, with family, with a partner, because you have gambling on your mind, massive red flag. All right, if you're sitting down in the evening trying to watch a film with your missus or your mates or whatever, and you're not concentrating on either them or the thing that you're all there to do, in this case the film, because you've got some bets riding and you just want to keep checking your phone, or worse still, if you transitioned from sports betting to the online casino, which is normally where gambling addictions go to get completely out of control, and you're just sitting there casually playing a bit of blackjack on your phone, just glancing over, having the odd hand here and there, a few spins on slots while you're there, and you're not paying any attention to those people around you, that isn't just a red flag, that is a whole host of red flags. That is a fleet of red flags, all right? And that is the point at which you should actively seek some form of help. And that doesn't mean going to counselling. It doesn't necessarily mean going to GA meetings. But you require some form of assistance. And that can literally be from talking to people, talking to those closest to you, telling your mates that you think you might have a bit of an issue so they can be on the lookout for you. Blokes will take the piss, right? That's what we do. Okay, but generally speaking, if they are true friends, they will be there and they will keep an eye out for you. And also, if you tell your friends that you're going to quit gambling and you're going to stop because you think you've got a problem, and then you go and you got spotted playing a fruit machine or having a bet on your phone or whatever when you're out with your friends having a beer, you're going to be the one getting in the neck. Oh, there goes Phil. Never change him. He's always going to be the same, losing his money again. What an idiot. All right? And you're going to feel about that big. So tell as many people as you can, because if you actually truly intend to stop, then the risk of humiliation and shame from your peers is probably as good a block as almost anything else I can recommend. If you're waking up in the morning feeling like you've been punched in the stomach because you've gambled the day before and lost, massive red flag. All right, there's a lot of red flags. Fucking red flags flying all over the place. It's like some sort of Moscow rally in here, right? But yeah, that we know that feeling. If you're a gambler, you might know that feeling. It doesn't necessarily mean that you've got a problem, but what it does mean is that you've gambled more than you should have done. All right. But if you find yourself regularly either unable to sleep waking up at random times, thinking about losses, thinking about gambling in general, whatever. Or you wake up and after the first 3 or 4 blissful seconds where you just wake up and you're opening your eyes and it's a new day and lovely, right? And then suddenly you feel like you've been punched in the stomach because you remember that yesterday, after work, you were just going to have a quick tenner in the fruit machine, and now you lost 300 quid. Now you're skint for the rest of the month, and you've got old matey's birthday to go to tomorrow, and you haven't got any money for it. So you know you're going to have to beg, steal, and borrow, and go through that whole humiliating process of trying to raise some funds just to get you through to the end of the month. And by then you owe enough money out that you pay it back out, pay everyone off, and you're skint again. And the cycle continues, as is the life of a gambling addict. If you find yourself after a loss, and I'm going to make this the last one because I'm droning on and on and on, but this is an important one. And again, it's one of the cliched ones, but it is important. If after a loss you find yourself needing some sort of reconciliation. Now, the most common way of this is loss chasing, and that's what they'll talk to you about is loss chasing. Is you feel the need after a loss to go back to either where you lost in the first place or somewhere else to win back the money that you lost. If you're doing that, that's a red flag number 736, right? But also, if you feel the need to reconcile your finances, okay, because either A, you lost money that you needed for something else, and that's, well, yeah, you know what? That's a red flag, believe it or not, right? You've done that. Or if the psychological impact of the loss, leaving that hole in your finances in your bank account, is sufficient, what it might do is make you want to go and find the money that you lost, not because you need it for something, but because you need to plug that psychological gap in your head where that money you lost should be. For example, you go out, you stupidly lose £1,000, right? That's a lot of money, obviously. I made it a lot of money for anyone. Then you might feel the need, even if you didn't need that £1,000, even if it was savings or inheritance or whatever, and it wasn't earmarked for anything, you're not going to be left destitute or homeless, or your bills are going to get paid. You know what I'm talking about. I'm rambling, right? But you feel the need to go out and take out a loan for £1,000, oddly making your loss now 1,200 quid or whatever the interest is going to be, just for mental parry, right? Just to balance the books in your brain. If you're doing that, and I speak very, very personally on that one because I used to do it all the time. My last point, I've said this many times before, but most of the debt I had gambling, and I racked up probably £50,000 in debt. Okay, most of the debt I had from my lifetime of gambling wasn't money I'd borrowed with a view to gambling it. It was money I'd borrowed because I'd lost money in the day before or the week before, and I needed, for my own mental well-being, to put my mental balance on parity. So if I'd lost money, I wanted to replace it because that way I hadn't really lost it, had I? I still had the same amount, even though I now had a big negative figure over here that was getting bigger all the time. So if you're young, I'm not telling you not to gamble. I would never tell you not to gamble. What I will tell you to do is to subscribe to the channel. Maybe join me on Patreon, buy me a beer in the link description below, all those other great YouTube things. But what I would say is try it, but for God's sake, be on your guard, okay? And when that little voice in the back of your head starts niggling, or when you find yourself exercising any of those behaviours I just mentioned, then just take a step back and try and look at it more pragmatically. Trust me, a life without gambling is easy until you get to a point where there's no going back. And you don't want to be there because it's bloody hard to claw your way out of. Stay safe and sane, everyone.